Have you ever wanted to teach yourself German? Have you been interested in learning a skill outside of school, like coding? Have you wanted to self-study something that you didn't quite understand from class? Hey there guys, and welcome back to UnJaded Jade. So as you guys know, I love learning, and I've realized that I can't just learn one thing. I want to learn languages and neuroscience and philosophy and history and business, and I want to know how to code and so many other things that over time I did develop this ability of how to self-study something that I might not necessarily be learning within university or school. In today's video, I'm going to discuss my advice for how to make self-studying easier. Also, clock this new fancy looking mic. Tell me what you guys think of it. Also, I have the coziest ginger tea. I've got a candle going. It's a lovely autumn day. Before I get started, this video is very kindly sponsored by Mindstone, and I am obsessed with Mindstone. Like, so much so that I even met the founders and I just gushed to them and I was like, what you are doing is insane. Mindstone's mission is to make self-learning easier. We all know there's literally a million resources on the internet for how to learn stuff. Like, it's kind of overwhelming, right? There's Coursera, there's YouTube, there's Medium articles, there's podcasts, there's textbooks, there's so many different resources you can use nowadays to learn stuff. It's hard to know how to organize it, it's hard to know what's worth your time, like which ones are the high quality resources and which ones aren't. And so the idea of Mindstone is anyone can easily create a course, which is basically a compilation of resources that they've found useful to learn something. So for example, someone who successfully self-taught themselves UI UX design, which is user interface, user experience design, they went through that struggle. They understood that, for example, Google's UI UX course was the best. They read a few books, and now they can create a course saying, here's the basics from beginner to successful UI UX designer. Here are the resources I used. Here are my notes, my annotations for what made this easier. Here's something you should pay attention to. I made a course on how to teach yourself anything, how to self-study, just as a complement to this video. It's all the podcasts, videos, articles which inspired me to learn more beyond school. It also showcases the articles that I used to learn how to study better. It was so fun to make, and I really hope it helps someone, and the link is in my bio. Let's get on with the video. Okay, so step number one to self-learning anything is set your goals. You need to understand what you want to learn, how long you want to learn it for, and why you want to learn it. This is the motivation that will carry you through. This is you understanding, am I here just because I randomly got excited about something today? Or is this something that I genuinely want to get better at over the next month or 3 months or year or 5 years? Ask yourself, am I just dabbling in this? How in depth do I want to learn something? How committed am I? Is my source of motivation extrinsic, so external to me? It's not about the process of learning, it's because I want a better grade and self-studying is going to help me get there. It's because I'm applying for a job and I really want to get that job, therefore I'm learning something which will help me get it. Is it just because you've always wanted to learn this and you find it really interesting and that source of motivation comes from within? Identifying that to yourself is such a good step. Secondly, find your resources. This is where Mindstone comes in. They're incredible for tailoring the resources that you might need to actually learn something. Whether it's a Coursera course, a textbook, which people have said is useful, just spend some time doing some research to make sure that what you're learning from is actually good. Ideally, make sure there are practice questions or access to an expert or just some way that you can test your knowledge as you're going through. I don't know if you've heard of a MOOC. It's a massive online open course, but those are generally wonderful to learn from, and most universities make MOOCs, so you can almost take a mini university course. Number 3, set up your framework for learning. So you've got your resources, there's probably a lot there. It can be really useful to create smaller topics and lessons. So to look at everything that you're eventually going to learn, look at your time period, say 3 months, and then break it into, say, 15-minute chunks that you can do every single day. To manage this, I highly recommend using an app like Notion, or you can also use a journal or a planner, but write out every single topic and how long roughly it's going to take and where you're going to get the resource from. And then you've kind of created your syllabus, right? You've created this easy place that you can just come to every time you want to study, and you know what you're going to do because it's already been set up for you by yourself. One of the reasons that self-studying can be so hard is because you don't have that structure from school. You have to create the structure. And so the more you can do that from the start, the more likely you are to actually continue and finish it. Number 4, time management and habits. To make this process of self-studying stick, It needs to become a habit in your routine. The definition of a habit is something which has been repeated so much over time that it's almost an unconscious decision now. There's no effort, there's no dragging yourself with motivation to sit down and self-study. You don't have to think because you have organized your life and your routine to make it easy for yourself. How can you do that? Well, firstly, you can have a very concrete implementation intention, which is the idea that I am going to self-study at this specific location at this specific time, every day or every other day or once a week, and making that very clear and concrete. So where is it going to happen? For me, I could say every morning at 8 a.m, I'm going to sit at this desk and I'm going to do the topic that I've assigned for myself on Notion. It's clear, I know when I'm going to do it, it can become a habit, I don't have to think too much. Or equally, if I know I don't wake up exactly the same time for uni every day, I can attach this new habit onto an existing habit in my routine. So I can say, when I finish brushing my teeth in the morning, I'm going to come to my desk and do my 15 minutes of self-study. So no matter what time I wake up, I'm always going to brush my teeth, therefore I'm always going to come self-study. The second you can make this process a habit, the less stressful it's going to be every day, you're just going to do it. Especially for the first week or so, I really recommend something like Google Calendar or bullet journal as well, just to give yourself these reminders every day. Like, oh, I said I would study, like pops up notification, it says self-study, you're gonna go do it. You can also time block your day and fit it into a messy schedule if you have to. And then we get into the process of learning. The first step to learning is understanding. This is something you don't normally have to worry about that much when you've already got the structure of school or you've got a teacher or professor, because you know that you can keep probing them until you do understand. But when you're self-studying, you're often on your own. I really recommend your first step of learning being videos or podcasts or anything that goes into depth where you can kind of absorb it and try and understand the concepts. And basically, until you understand, don't move on to memorizing or testing yourself. You gotta absorb to get it. And then secondly, this is where we bring in the science of learning. This asks you, how can I remember what I'm learning? And if you're not self-studying for an exam or an external motivator, this can be hard to get yourself to sit down and review information that you've already learnt. No one's going to hold you to do it. Based on the science of learning, the best way that you can do this is to use things like spaced repetition. If you've never heard of this concept before, there's basically the human forgetting curve, I'm going to put it here, which says that when we first review any kind of information, when you first listen to that podcast, you're first being taught something, your memory exponentially decays over time. After 2 days, suddenly you can kind of remember the concepts, but not really. After 1 week, it's completely gone. You just don't remember. It's like you never heard the podcast. The way that you can prevent this is going over the same information in regularly increasing intervals. So the day after you learn something, just look at it over again, like test your knowledge. Then 4 days after, then 6 days after, then a week after, go over that same information, and then you're going to get your memory back up to 100%. It's also really important not to just reread information, but to test yourself actively on it, which is something called active recall. We love things like highlighting and reading because they're passive, like they just don't require that much effort, but because of that, they're really ineffective as revision techniques. So the best thing you can do is combine this spaced repetition, this frequent recall, with an active activity where you're testing your knowledge. It's like a flashcard, you're being asked a question. So definitely set up a process for reviewing things like Anki or Quizlet, which I'll link down below. They're free flashcard tools, they're really easy for you to implement information, and then they'll put the science of learning in there for you. You don't have to think about it. Thirdly, in the learning process, start doing some practice questions, some applications, some harder problems, and also start having conversations with friends about it. Start trying to teach people who have no idea about these concepts, so that it forces you to keep these concepts front of mind. It tests your understanding. Like, it's one thing to be in your room self-studying every day, thinking that you understand everything because you're absorbing information, and then realizing that you can't even repeat it to your friend the day after. Make the self-study of this thing part of your personality. Like, tell all your friends, hey guys, like, I'm learning philosophy right now. I'm learning about these philosophers' theories of distributive justice. And then once a week, be like, oh my God, I learned this really cool thing in this philosophy class that I'm taking, and then try and apply it to something in both of your real lives so it feels more applicable. That's where this stuff is gonna work, when the self-studying starts to seep seep into your real life and you can just recall the information whenever you want. And lastly, celebrate your success. Give yourself rewards, remind yourself that this is so incredibly disciplined of you to be learning something of your own accord. Like, that's amazing, and is you developing a skill which you can use in any future job, in your career, in your life, in anything. Imagine yourself in 3 weeks, in a month, in a year, in 5 years, if you continue this practice regularly, like every single day. Imagine if you donated 5 minutes to learning a language. Little and often is so much better than 10 hours in one day and then forgetting it for a month. Okay, that's all I have to say. A huge thank you to Mindstone for sponsoring this video, and check out my course on self-studying if you want to see how I got this information and how I was first inspired into these ideas. My casual magic for the day is... Okay, so this morning before class, I went for a run at Tempelhof. I ran all the way there. It's basically this abandoned airport in Berlin. It's so beautiful. And I had this moment of freedom. I can't describe what it's like to be running on the place where planes should be flying. Like, you feel like you're flying. It's the most open land. It's like a field. Everyone just looks so joyful. And then specifically my moment of magic was there was this girl running towards me and we just made eye contact, and she gave me the biggest smile, like a bright beaming smile that you'd give a loved one or a family member, you know, not just a stranger. And I just smiled back at her, and then we both kept running. I never saw her again, never really, you know, don't know her, but it was just like this mutual moment of joy in the experience. It was really cool. Okay, that's my casual magic. I hope this video helped you in some way, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.